I spent 40 years putting everyone else first. My husband, my kids, my home. And now I'm 82 years old, and my daughter just looked me in the eyes and said 5 words that broke my entire world. She said, "I'm terrified of becoming you. Give me 10 minutes before you make the biggest mistake of your life. I need to tell you something that nobody warns you about. Not your mother, not your friends, not any of those parenting books sitting on your shelf collecting dust. They all tell you the same beautiful lie, that being a good mother means giving everything, all of yourself. And they're wrong. They are completely, dangerously wrong. My name is Margaret. I was born in 1943 in a small town outside of Louisville, Kentucky. And the story I'm about to tell you is the story of how I disappeared. Not physically. Physically, I was always there. I was the most present mother you'd ever meet. But the woman I was supposed to become, she vanished. And I helped kill her. I married Richard in 1965. I was 22 years old, fresh out of a teaching program at the university. I had a certificate to teach English literature. I loved books, Dickinson, Austen, Bronte. I had this dream of standing in front of a classroom and watching young people fall in love with words the way I did. That was my dream. That was who Margaret was. But 3 months after the wedding, I was pregnant with our first, Thomas, and Richard, bless his heart, he sat me down at the kitchen table and said, "Margaret, a child needs its mother at home. You can always go back to teaching later." And I believed him, because that's what everyone believed back then. A woman's place was in the home. So I put my teaching certificate in a drawer. I told myself it was temporary. Then came David in 1967. Then came Susan in 1970. And that drawer, I stopped opening it. Here's what they don't tell you about sacrifice. It doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It's not like you wake up one morning and hand over your dreams on a silver platter. No, it happens slowly. It happens in tiny, invisible cuts. A hobby you skip this week because the baby has a fever. A night class you cancel because nobody else can watch the boys. A friend you stop calling because you're too exhausted to hold a conversation after 9 p.m. Each one feels small. Each one feels reasonable. Each one feels temporary. But they stack up. And one day you look around and realize you have no idea who you are anymore outside of being somebody's mother. And by then, it's too late to even remember what you lost. I want to tell you about a Tuesday in 1978. I remember it was a Tuesday because that was the day the community college offered evening English courses, and I had signed up. I was so excited. For the first time in 13 years, I was going to do something that was mine. I bought a new notebook. I picked out a blouse. I felt like a person again. And then Susan. She was 8. She came home from school crying because she didn't get the part in the school play. And Thomas had a science project due the next morning that he hadn't started. And David needed new cleats for practice. Richard was working late, and I looked at that notebook sitting on the counter, and I thought, next semester, I'll go next semester. I never went, but that wasn't the hardest pill to swallow. The hardest part was that nobody noticed. Nobody in my family ever said, "Margaret, what happened to your class?" Not Richard. not the kids. Nobody, because to them, I had no class to miss. I was just mom. Mom doesn't have plans. Mom doesn't have dreams. Mom is always available. That's what mom is for. And I accepted it. I wore it like a badge of honor. I ironed their shirts at 6 a.m. I packed lunches with little notes inside. I drove carpool in the rain. I sat through every baseball game, every dance recital, every parent-teacher conference. I did it all, and I did it perfectly. But here is the truth that nobody talks about. I didn't do it out of pure love. I did it because I had nothing else. Motherhood wasn't just my role. It became my entire identity. And when your identity is someone else's childhood, what happens when that childhood ends? I'll tell you exactly what happens. Thomas left for college in 1984. David in 1986. Susan in 1988. And the silence that followed, the silence was the loudest sound I have ever heard in my life. Louder than any crying baby, louder than any slamming door. That house, which had been bursting with noise and mess and life for 20 years, was suddenly just rooms. Empty rooms that smelled like old laundry detergent and dust. I sat at that kitchen table, the same table where Richard told me to put my dreams away, and I thought, now what? The kids are gone. Richard is at work, and I am sitting here alone, with absolutely no idea what to do with myself, because I had spent 2 decades being needed, and now nobody needed me anymore. I know what some of you are thinking right now. Well, at least you have your husband. Let me tell you something about that. Richard and I had become roommates. Not enemies, not strangers. Roommates. We were polite. We ate dinner together. We watched television. But we had built our entire marriage around the children. And when the children left, we had nothing to talk about. I didn't know his favorite song anymore. He didn't know mine. We had forgotten how to be 2 people. We only knew how to be parents. And you might think this sounds dramatic, but go to any church social in America and look at the couples over 60. Really look at them. Half of them are sitting in silence eating casserole, trying to remember why they married the person across from them. That's the quiet epidemic nobody writes about. But the moment that truly shattered me came decades later. It was 2019. Susan, my youngest, she was 49 by then. She came to visit me for Mother's Day. And we were sitting on the porch drinking iced tea, and she said something that knocked the wind out of me harder than anything in my 82 years on this earth. She said, "Mom, I love you, but I've spent my whole adult life trying not to become you." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just held my glass and stared at the yard. She said, "I watched you disappear. I watched you give up everything. Your books, your friends, your dreams. And everyone praised you for it. Dad praised you. The church praised you. Everyone said you were the perfect mother. But Mom, I was there. I saw your face. I saw how tired you were. Not physically tired. Tired in your soul. And it terrified me because of watching me, my sacrifice, the thing I was most proud of, the thing that defined my entire life, was the very thing that almost stopped my own daughter from becoming a mother. If I had stopped there, maybe things would have been okay. But I didn't. I asked her, was I a bad mother? And she shook her head. She said, "No, Mom. You were an amazing mother, but you were a terrible role model because you taught me that being a mother means erasing yourself, and that's not something I'm willing to do." And she was right. That's the part that hurt the most. She was absolutely, completely, devastatingly right. I look back at 1978, that Tuesday, that notebook, and I don't cry about the English class I missed. I cry about the 41 years that followed it. 41 years of telling myself next semester. 41 years of choosing everyone else's happiness over my own and calling it love. But it wasn't love. Not really. It was fear. I was afraid that if I took something for myself, even one evening a week, I would be a bad mother. I was afraid that if I pursued my own dreams, my children would feel abandoned. I was afraid of what Richard would think, what the neighbors would think, what the women at church would say behind my back. So I stayed small. I stayed invisible. I stayed perfect. And the result? My children grew up healthy and successful. Thomas is a lawyer. David runs his own business. Susan is a wonderful mother herself. By every measure that society uses, I won. I did it. I raised 3 good people, but I lost Margaret. The woman who loved Emily Dickinson is gone. The woman who wanted to teach teenagers about the power of words disappeared into a pile of packed lunches and iron shirts and carpool schedules, and I will never, ever get her back. Now I'm going to talk to you directly because I know who's watching this. You're 28 or 34 or 41. You're exhausted. You've got a toddler on your hip and a to-do list that never ends. You haven't read a book in months. You canceled plans with your friend again because somebody needs you. You keep telling yourself the same lie I told myself. When the kids are older, I'll have time for me. When they start school, I'll pick up my hobbies again. When they move out, I'll finally travel, finally learn, finally live. Stop. Listen to an 82-year-old woman who believed that exact same lie for 4 decades. That day never comes. Not the way you think it will. Because by the time you get there, you won't remember what you wanted anymore. The dreams you put on hold don't sit patiently in a drawer waiting for you. They rot, they decompose, and eventually, they turn into regret so deep it lives in your bones. If you died tomorrow, would your children remember a mother who was happy? Or would they remember a mother who was always available but never truly alive? Ask yourself that. Be honest, because your kids don't need a perfect mother. They need a whole one. They need to see you reading your own books. They need to see you chasing something that lights you up. They need to see you say, "Not right now, sweetheart. Mommy has her own thing tonight." Because that is what teaches them they're allowed to have a life too. The greatest gift you can give your children is not your constant presence. It is your own identity. A mother who knows who she is raises children who know who they are. A mother who has erased herself raises children who are terrified of becoming her. I know this because I lived it. I am the cautionary tale sitting in front of you. So here is my challenge. This week, do one thing that is yours. Not for your children, not for your partner, not for your household. Yours. Sign up for that class. Call that friend. Buy that book. Go for a walk alone. And don't feel guilty about it. And if somebody in your life makes you feel selfish for that, look at me. Look at where selfless got me. I'm 82. I live in a quiet house. Richard passed in 2017. My kids call on Sundays sometimes, and I sit on this porch with my iced tea, thinking about a notebook I bought in 1978. A notebook with nothing written in it. Don't let your story end like mine. If this reached you, share it with a mother who needs to hear this today. Leave a comment and tell me what's the one thing you have been putting off. And subscribe, because I have more truths to share and not much time left to share them.